sure everyone's been looking through it already. It's very impressive. And on behalf of the club, on behalf of the Green Army, a big thanks to Ken for putting it together. First of all, I'll take you through the running order tonight. I'll be discussing the book with Ken, and he'll be taking part in a quick Q&A, so get your questions at the ready. Then we've got a few guests. We've got Ron Guthrie sat at the back of the room from the 78 Cup Run team. We're coming all the way up to date. Graham Fenton from the 2005 treble winning team and the Cup Run in 2009. Last season's captain Wayne Buchanan is here, and current manager Tom Wade. I have threatened Tom that if the interviews don't run on long enough, we will be discussing last night's result. So if anyone does want to ask any questions, we'll save time for that. I have just thawed out from Darling last night personally, so I know there's quite a few who were there. So first of all, we'll have a chat with Ken. And Ken, I know from regular discussions with you, it took quite a while to put the book together. What was it that inspired you to do it?
Well, I have been writing articles for the programme under the pseudonym of A.F.C. I don't know if anybody remember those, but they went down quite well, and somebody from the Supporters Club asked us to write the club history. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That was 8 years ago. It's taken quite a while, because once I started writing it, I found out there wasn't any history there. I had to research it all myself, but it's been great. And once you get started on something like that, you kind of want to keep going. You don't want to waste the last couple of years, so you just keep plodding along.
And from the planning process all the way through to publication, how long has that taken?
Well, I can't remember exactly when I started. It was about 8 years ago. There's been times where I've had to take a break from it because, you know, life gets in the way. But but the real core of the book was written about 3 years ago. I decided to go to Blyth Library and live in it. Reading all the archives, all the Blyth newses, all the news post leaders. It was a fascinating world unveiled itself. So I thought I had to try and capture that. Nobody knew anything about the old players. So I had to try and recreate their lives, find out about them. And as it went on, it became, you know, like when you're a supporter, you look forward to the next game. When I was writing the book, I had that all the time. I've read the report of that week. I can't wait to see the next one. So I had like whole seasons in one day, and it was fantastic, especially when we're winning.
So it's been a real labour of love for you.
It's a labour of love, but it's also an absolute pleasure. It really has been. I've already got ideas for next books as well. So there could be more next time.
Let's buy this one first.
Going back all the way back to 1909, I think, and further beyond that, what were the main frustrations involved?
Well, a modern frustration is the fact the internet kind of destroys things, and it's hard to track down information about games that I've actually seen myself, and you can't remember things, and you want to get it right, but as stuff disappears off online. Other frustrations, some of the newspapers were missing from the past, and another frustration, something I wish I was about 150 years old, so I could have been to all the games, because that would have been great, but you know. But it's just been time, and I was a bit of frustration with funding as well, but people have come together, and we're here tonight because of that.
You mentioned about people coming together. What kind of support have you had?
I've had a lot of support. Anytime I've needed anything, there's been somebody there who's been able to provide that. I would like to thank my wife. Because she made the space. Well, that support, the Supporters Club was great. Old players who I've managed to interview, they've been excellent. Blyth Library give us all the time I needed to sit there and hug the microphone. I've had great support, superb financial support from a particular donor who I have to say thank you. Put that officially, wants to be anonymous, so I respect that. And just generally people asking how's the book getting on, and it keeps it going. It shows that people care and people are interested.
I'm sure people can see behind us, we've got the slideshow going. There's plenty of characters on there and plenty of good memories.
Yep.
Is any that stick out for you?
I've got lots of memories about matches, and when I was reading the archives and everything, some of the players, I wish I could have met them because they seem great people. In writing the book, I've come across two ex-players who I thought were real characters. One was Tom Yorick, who was a star striker in the 60s, and he's the most competitive man I've ever met. Even though he played in the 60s, so he's getting on a bit now. And he was, well, after I finished playing football, I started to breed dogs, and I was third in Crufts, and he started showing his fish tanks. And it wasn't just an ordinary fish tank; it had to be the best fish tank. And he was saying, "These are really hard to breed, and I've got them living in salt water." It was that mentality, that winning mentality, and he was still quite spiky and still like you could see if he could play, he would, And another one was Arthur Selden, who was the captain in the 50s, and I've never met a man just so full of football. He was brilliant, So thanks to Arthur as well. Thanks.
I know from our conversations, you've mentioned that it's not just Spartans fans who would want to read the book. Why is that?
Because you can't write the story of Blyth without writing the story of the other teams that have played in the leagues that have played in. If I was a Belleton fan or interested in football in Belleton or Ashton or Whitley Bay, North Shields, Gateshead, and indeed Newcastle or Sunderland, there's so much in this book which I think would be fresh to them, and I think they should have this book as well, because there's loads and loads in it, and it's how we've interacted with them over the years. Thankfully beaten them most times, but even teams like New Delaval Villa, who were Blyth's main rivals in the very early days, it's just so much shank house, and you go through them. Blyth were rivals with Bedlington, got the better of them, their rivals at Ashton got the better of them, and it's touch and go with Gateshead at the minute, but we'll get the better of them.
You've obviously, it's in-depth history of the club. Is there any moments, obviously not giving too much away, but people are going to read the book, that stand out for you?
There's more recent moments which stand out, like the cup run, the first goal against Shrewsbury. I think there's still a mark on the terrace and when we jaw hit it. I just couldn't believe it. The moment when I realised we were going to score against Bournemouth, I thought even hit the back of the net and I was already in the air. But before then, looking back through the history, when we've come out of nowhere and beat Crewe Alexandra in 1972, and that really set the club up. And 71 would have been November. And obviously there's the 77-78 cup run, which everybody knows about. But there's so much to our history. And when I first wrote the book, it was going to be called More Than 78, to emphasise the fact it's been going since 1899. There was a lot of history of Blyth football before that, and so I just try and get all that in. There's many memorable moments, sad moments as well when you read the book, but many great moments.
So we sit here after 8 years of planning, writing and publication, and you've got the book in front of you there now. What's the overriding feelings?
First one, anxiety. I thought you just stand here myself tonight, and it's great to see there's people here, so thanks. The next anxiety is, well, I'm going to have a garage full of books, so let's hope we can get it sold. But after that, it's quite reflection and a little bit of, I'm pleased that it's happening now, and I'm just looking forward to the next book I bring out, which will probably be the all-time results.
Right, everyone, that's me finished with Ken, so if anyone has any questions, just pop your hands up and he'll happily answer them.
That's a good question. Ken, Shank House was named Shank House Black Watch.
That's right, yeah.
Do you know the origin of the name?
As far as I'm aware, it's an army name. Black Watch was a real name. Other than that, I couldn't tell you for sure. There you go.
Anyone else? Come on, I'm rubbish at interviews, someone must have a question.
Were you at Stoke for the fourth match?
No, I was 13 years old, and I've done an introduction in the forward. I wasn't there for family reasons. It wasn't really possible. I was at the 72 Amateur Cup semi-final, and I was matched before that. But my first big Spartans FA Cup adventure was really when we played Hull Burton Albion, that run, which I'm sure some of the supporters here will remember with fondness.
I'll ask a few general questions since they've dried up a bit. In terms of Blyth Spartans, it's a big name in non-league. I've said many times, and taken some stick off Gateshead fans, I still think it's the biggest non-league club in the area. What is it about the club that makes it special for yourself?
Well, it's local, but there's something about Blyth where people care about the club, and they care enough for it to keep going. And other non-league clubs, they have a good run, and that's the end of them really. But Blyth, they keep coming back. We'll have setbacks, and they keep coming back. And I know within the next 10 years we'll have another brilliant cup run, we'll win the league or get promoted, something like that. It's never boring. I'm sure everybody who here comes to watch them, there's always something happening. It's never boring, and I just can't wait to see what happens next week.
So league and cup run the next couple of years, Tom?
Oh, definitely.
No pressure.
When Mark asked about the support, or somebody else I'd like to mention as well, is Graham Musher, who can't be here tonight. I just got a text off him before he can't make it. He done all the graphics for the book, and he had me asking him questions all the time, and like asking me to do things, short notes all the time, and he put loads of work in, very early in the morning before he went to work. And it's Graham who designed the cover, and it's Graham who put the graphics together, so I'd like to put on record thanks to Graham as well.
We'll bring it up to date. Obviously, we've been talking about the history of the club. This season, there's a young Spartan side, and the one that you said echoes the past.
Yeah. Well, when you read the book, you'll see echoes the late 20s. Money was a bit tight. By the mid-30s, they had won the North Eastern League. In the late 60s, again, the club had to turn amateur due to circumstances, but a young team put together. By 1972, I'd beaten Crewe in Stockport and could have played Arsenal. The Reading game had went better. And we started dominating the Northern League. In the late 80s, there was again a very young team put together, and very similar circumstances to now. By the mid-90s, we were going up the pyramid, we had another great cup run. So I can see parallels to that now. There's some great young players, and it's good to watch. The football is good to watch.